Hey there, sword friends. Today I have two very long-awaited swords from JKoo Swords, Sinoswords, and here it is. Hey, what's up guys? So before I go into like all the details of the sword and all that, into the review, I want to give a little couple shout outs to a couple people that inspired me into basically starting up this channel. First off, Backyard Samurai, grandpapa of swords and sword reviews for many years. Eric Husayn, which is honestly king of cutting. You should definitely check out his channel. Karl, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Karl, just don't kill me if I don't pronounce your name right, but it's Karl Ruedger, I believe it is. It's Ruedger. He's fantastic practitioner. Obviously had training or has been doing it for such a long time. He's an excellent cutter, excellent tatami mat cutter. You should definitely check out his stuff. And he has many JKoo swords, and that's basically where I got the idea of shopping JKoo swords for a custom sword. So definitely all credit to all these guys. And I can't forget Jensen, which is pretty much king of sword reviews in this whole community. So great shout out to these guys. Definitely check out their channels. I'll try to put links into the description of their channels, but they're a great informative source. Also, if you're into swords or shopping swords or wanted to get reviews of swords, definitely check them out and give them a sub. And give my channel a sub too if you can at the same time, because I'm trying to build the channel, starting out, so I can get as many subs as possible. So any help would be appreciated. So on with the review. All right, so before I start reviewing this JKoo sword, this is one of two that I received from JKoo Swords. I chose to start with this one first. I want to talk to you about dealing with JKoo swords in general. Went to their website, shopped around for their stock swords. The highlight of basically the sword company is the fact that you can customize your swords. Now, the reason why I like customizing swords is the fact that I wouldn't call them, once you customize a sword, you're able to basically choose from whatever hardware they have, including the sayas, all the hardwares, the Suba, the Fuchi, the Kashira, and everything, and you can make a sword your own. So it's not a specific sword. You can go into Hanwei or these other companies where you see a stock sword that everyone's able to buy and take home, and it'll be generally identical to each other for the most part. A custom sword is something that is your creation. You choose the color scheme, you choose the theme of the sword, the steel, the size, the width, everything about it. So in general, the sword is, I won't call it one of a kind, because other people can choose to, replicate what you have, but I would say it's unique. It's not something you can normally just go in and shop and buy and take home and it'll be identical to your next door neighbor. So that's why I really like the fact of the custom sword being a unique sword. It's something around your desire, how you want a sword to look. You can get multiple swords and have totally different schemes of different swords. I know Karl has like about eight JKoo swords now, and they're all completely different. Okay, so in terms of basically dealing with their customer service, you do everything via email. It's the specific person I spoke to was Van. We went through emails back and forth. I think throughout the whole process, we must have exchanged about 110, 120 emails back and forth. So they're very good at getting back to you. Obviously, there's the time difference, a 12-hour ahead. So there's always that day, day after that you're going to be getting responses, unless you catch them when they're there, and you can go with emails back and forth. But, you have to have that appropriate time when he's available and you can go back and forth. But other than that, you can expect about a day after you send the email to get a reply from him. But they always do reply, very courteous. They give you all the information they can give you. There's a couple of things lost in translation because obviously, Chinese to American, American to Chinese. But for the most part, you guys, we were able to understand each other, understand what we were trying to say, and communication was fine. When I did order the sword, I ordered it with one of these type of order forms here. And these order forms, you can download the order form yourself, or you can fill out on the website, and then they'll get back to you. I chose to download the actual spreadsheet and fill it out myself, and then email to him via email. So this way I was able to get through the information that I needed to him, and also give him some more in the body of the email along with the form. Generally, they as soon as you get them, you choose what you want. They get back to you with a quote. And then if you want to move forward with the quote or make any changes to the quote, then they'll go back to you with the final price, and then you choose to basically do the purchase or not. It's not really that difficult, and it's pretty organized for the most part as far as the ordering the swords, considering the fact that everything is through email. When you do order the sword, when you do finally order the swords, and you put the order in, you pay for it, so on and so forth, they actually tell you right from the get-go, the swords will take anywhere from 60 to 75 days to get from when you pay for it to when the production is done. So at least they do tell you there is going to be a large amount of time that you need to wait before you get the sword. They're not telling you a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They literally tell you up to 70 days. Now, my particular swords took a little bit longer than that to get back. So it actually took more on the lines of like 85 to 90 days to actually get the completed sword. So it took a little bit longer, but you know, for the most part, it's around that ballpark, I guess they tell you. The biggest problem I had with getting my swords from JKoo is not entirely their fault. I just happened to order it. I actually had, the sword was ready on in December of 26th, and it was shipped the day after I approved it, like on the 27th. They shipped it via EMS shipping. Now, let me give some advice to you guys, and this is either using JKoo swords or any other custom sword company you're going to be dealing with. Make sure they do not use EMS. SF Express is actually the better courier to come in from China when you're ordering from their sword, the sword forges. EMS is terrible. The sword was basically stuck in China for about a month before we even knew that it was stuck in China. They kind of lied to them and lied to me. And I mean, I don't know what the full story is, but for the most part, EMS never delivered the sword when it was supposed to. And in the entire time, I thought it was in the States, but it wasn't. It was stuck in China for over a month. So finally, when it was located, they did finally get it back to me. It was delivered on January 23rd is when I actually finally got the shipment, and the swords were ready from JKoo. They actually shipped them on December 27th. So that's just an elaborate amount of time to get the swords back. I've ordered swords from SF Express and gotten the swords back in probably about 7 days or less. So definitely a big difference. So definitely do not use EMS, or at least make sure that whoever you're shipping from, whoever they're using to ship, is not EMS. So that's one piece of advice. The greatest thing about JKoo swords from the get-go is the fact that when I did receive the sword and I did all my measurements on the sword, you're able to pick the length of the sword. I picked the 30-inch length. I picked the steel. I picked the actual folding pattern, which is a laminated blade, which actually was a Kobuse blade, Kobuse, and it was a Shobu, a Zukuri style architecture of the blade. Mirror polishing, I selected razor sharp. Not to read you everything that I chose is actually what they did. So I got, aside from maybe a centimeter or two off on some of the measurements, everything was completely on the money. So whatever I put into my order form is exactly what they gave me, which is fantastic. And as I go into the details of the sword now, I'm actually, everything that you see on the sword and everything that I will speak about in the sword is everything that I chose to customize on the sword, from the front to the back. Everything is exactly what I told them I needed to have done, and they executed everything perfectly. So before I go into the details of the sword, you have to keep in mind that this sword was $286. With shipping, it was $337, but you have to consider this sword as a $286 sword, a sub $300 sword. Now, when you see the features that are put into this sword, a solid 30-inch blade, a 12-inch suka length, a leather-wrapped suka, leather-wrapped Ito suka, Hishigami battle wrap. It's got panel race skin, not full panel, but at least panel race skin, and pretty good quality Samigawa as well. It's got a high bowhide. It's got really beautiful mirror polishing. It's a Shobu Zukuri architecture, and most important, aside from the fact it's got an Okasaki type of tip. It's an elongated tip to the sword. But most importantly, this sword is a Kobuse laminated blade. It's a folded steel blade, and if it's truly a Kobuse blade, which I'm imagining it is because you can see the fold, it's definitely a folded laminated blade. That's unheard of for a sub $300 sword. I mean, you could spend in the thousands for one of the higher quality Motoharas or Citadels that are folded blades. So for them to be able to execute, you know, quality fittings, quality casted fittings, extremely tight Ito, leather wrapped, long blade, beautiful saya, it's pretty remarkable that you're able to get this for sub $300. So keep that in mind as you see the details of the sword. The first piece we have here is the Kashira. So the Kashira is something that I chose. I went with basically like a flower pattern on everything on the sword. I did some bamboo plants and more of like a flower pattern on everything. So here there's a lot of detail that they put into the castings. I was actually very impressed at the detail of the castings. They almost look like they were actually handmade because there's a lot of 3D bevels here. Everything is, the flowers and everything kind of protrude out a little bit. It's actually really, really well done. The only thing that I was not happy with this Kashira is the fact that it does wobble from side to side a little bit. Let me see if I can hold it from here. You can see it kind of wobbles from side to side a little bit. So which means to tell me that there was no epoxy or any glue that was put in on the bottom here to keep it in place. It is tied to a nice knot here. I don't think anything is, it shouldn't come off because it's tied to a nice knot, but you definitely want to have this glued up. So if you're ordering from them, if you decide to order from them, and I know I will do the same thing, I will definitely let them know to try to glue in the Kashira into the actual handle, so this way you won't have that problem. But that kind of annoys me a little bit, the fact that it wasn't glued in and it's not fixed right. So you definitely want to keep that in mind if you're ordering from them. So now the Suka, okay, is a leather wrapped Suka. Okay, it's a Rika shape. It's an hourglass or wasted shape. There's a couple of things that you can name this type of shape. Wasted, Rico, or hourglass shape. So this particular shape is really nice because it actually fits in the hand perfectly, and the actual manuki is in the middle of the blade right here, of the Suka right here. So it's not, you're not holding it on each side, it's not actually in your hand. So I think this actual battle wrap is really what this is called. I'm sorry, this is actually called a battle wrap. It's actually much better to handle the sword with this type of wrapping, in my opinion anyway. So when you do hold it, okay, with the wasted shape, you have your hands perfectly fit into place exactly where they need to go. The Fuchi is also this flower pattern type of theme, which again is very detailed. I think it looks fantastic in their execution and how they got it done. It's you know, it has a couple little gold painting on the actual piece, which is really nice. It actually really stands out. It gives the overall sword a really nice look. It's pretty tight in terms of how it's placed. There is a little lip here on the side that your finger can touch. It's not anything that's terribly uncomfortable, but you can see the transition between the wrap and the Fuchi is not perfect. For $286 to customize the sword and get everything that's in this sword, it's actually pretty amazing, which when I get to the end of this review, you'll see exactly how much I put into the sword. So again, the Fuchi is actually in pretty good shape. It could have been a line better with the Ito, but it's actually very, very well done. Again, very, very good quality castings. I'm very impressed with it. So now we get into the Suba. The Suba, if I can get the proper camera angle here, the Suba is actually, I chose to go with a look of bamboo trees which you can see exactly what it looks like here. And again, this is actually, it looks like they actually really hand painted the gold onto it, because it actually, you can feel it where it actually protrudes out. So it's either a really amazing casting, or it was actually, there's some handmade, way of doing this. But whatever it is, it's actually a really, really nice piece. I was actually very impressed with what this looks like compared to all the custom companies that I viewed, that the Subas and the hardware that I chose. So they actually really have some really nice casted pieces. And if you look at the other side of the sword, it actually has very similar, it's identical on each side. So it's not like one side is more detailed than the other. Each side has exactly the same aesthetic look and the same details with the bamboo plants. The transition between the saya and the fuchi, which, let me see if I can get the proper angle. It could have been a little better. You can see that it is a little misaligned, but not terribly misaligned. But again, this is not something you're going to see on this price category. And if you get it aligned better than not, you're actually lucky, because for you to get a really good alignment and everything kind of sinks in and fits perfectly, you're spending a lot more on the sword. I mean, you're getting into the likes of the higher end Hanwei or Motohara or Citadel. I mean, that's where you're spending the money. You're spending the money for the fit and finish of the sword being almost perfect, or as perfect as you would want it to be. But from what I see here, it could have been aligned a little bit better, but it's really not terrible. I think it looks great. The saya has bullhorn, koiguchi, kojiri, brown bullhorn, and the kurigata is all brown bullhorn, and it's actually pretty well done. It's actually, the paint is pretty good. The transition here, right here from the saya is, there's a little bit of painting artifacts for the most part, but for the most part, I think it actually came out pretty good. But the bullhorn really does look good in the brown bullhorn that I chose. And again, this is exactly what I chose to put onto the sword from the options that they give you. So everything is bullhorn and it looks good. But if you look at the actual koiguchi mount, it's very clean. It's very good shape. It could have been shaped a little bit better towards the top and bottom of it, but for the most part, the wood looks very clean. There's no gunk or black stuff inside that you see a lot of sayas. It's actually, I think I was very impressed with how clean looking it is and how the sword goes in and out without pretty much of a problem. What I noticed though, once the sword is in there, it fits great, comes in and out pretty good. But when it's actually in the saya, you have a lot of sword rattle. So what would lead to tell me maybe the saya should have been kind of thinned out a little bit more, because if you notice the saya, it's a very good saya. It's beautiful, the paint, the varnish is great, which I'll get to that, but it should have maybe been thinned out a little bit to stop that sword rattle. But you're going to get that from time to time when you purchase swords. If you get one that fits a little bit better, that doesn't have a rattle, again, consider yourself lucky. But it's not uncommon. You would want it not to basically rattle like that, but it is what it is. Because the second sword that I received from JKoo actually has no sword rattle whatsoever. So it's kind of a hit or miss. So that's all I have to say about that. Okay, so the actual saya, okay, which you can see here, is a beautiful varnish. It's kind of like a brown varnish paint. I think it's probably about triple or quadruple coated, because it's really perfect. It's got some black speckles on it. It doesn't show any fingerprints whatsoever, which I actually prefer sayas like that do not show fingerprints. But it's really perfect. It's very smooth. There's no lines or ripples or anything like that. It actually is very well done. So getting into the Sageo, the string Sageo, it's actually pretty good quality Sageo. They gave you a nice presentation out. Too bad I'm going to take it apart when I cut with it. But it's not shoelace material. It's a pretty thick material for a custom sword. Something coming out of China like that. Obviously, it's not the best quality you're going to find like in very high-priced Japanese swords or higher price manufacturers or anything like that. But it's pretty good. It's a very thick material. I think it's going to stand the test of time really well. I notice when I do take it apart, the actual Showdown pieces, I can tell they're going to fall apart as soon as I take this apart. Now, if you really want to make sure that these are glued in tight, you maybe want to mention that when you order the sword. And I'm pretty sure that if you mention it when you do your custom order, they'll basically glue these in so they don't move. It's something that I know now, actually, if I do order more swords with them, which I'm sure I will, I'm going to mention to them to glue these in so they don't come apart. That's if the Showdowns are important to you. If they're not important to you, then it doesn't matter. But if you like the look of the sword and you want them to stay intact when you untie the knot, you definitely want to recommend to them to glue them in place to the actual knob or the kurogata. Now, the blade of the sword for me is really the highlight of the sword. Okay, it's the lamination. It's a laminated sword. Okay, the sword is a Kobuse style blade. Now the Kobuse is, if you look at the chart here, you have Maru, which is very common that most swords are Maru style, which is a hard steel, or it's called a Hagane, is the hard steel. And you know, some are true hardened, some are differentially hardened for the most part, but most swords are Maru style. When you get into the laminated steel is more in line with traditional Japanese makings of swords, okay, back from the old day. Kobuse is actually labeled as a method used on swords from World War II, which is actually pretty damn interesting to me. But in theory, it should definitely be a very nice type of laminated method of making swords that be able to have a very hard surface and be able to actually take a hit without taking a breakage. So we'll definitely take a look at that. But this is a Kobuse style blade. The steel itself, there's a lot of beautiful, beautiful things to look at. I mean, it's just the details, the folds, you can see the folds. Hopefully it comes out a lot in the pictures and the video that I'm showing you. But you see the hamon. The hamon is actually what they call it, is a mid-air irregular hamon. It looks beautiful. It's kind of like a little cloudy effect in the steel. It's just very, very well done. There's so many beautiful things to look at in the sword with this laminated blade that I think everyone should, at least one person, every person should have one of these types of laminated swords in their collection. If you're a collector and you like swords and you love the method of making these swords, everyone should have one of these swords. They're just so beautiful to look at, and hopefully it'll also show in its cutting performance. I think it's just a beautiful looking steel blade. Now, if you notice the Kasaki, I actually chose to go with an O-Kasaki, which is an extended tip. It has more of a thicker spine, and if you even look at the spine of the Kasaki, it's actually, but I'm gonna cut myself here. It actually has a very thick spine in the back of the Kasaki, the point, and the whole sword overall has a very thick spine. From what I read, the Shinobi Zukuri actually is it's a stronger type of blade for cutting. Which I'm actually looking forward to using it for that matter. But the O-Kasaki has an extended tip. There's no Yokote line, there's no termination, it just continues, the hamon continues all the way down. It's different from the Shinobi Zukuri, which has the Yokote line and has the different filings at the tip. So I really like the look of the Shobu Zukuri sword, Shobu Zukuri architecture on this sword. It's actually a high bowhai, I think I chose to give it a little bit of a noise, a little bit of audio feedback. You know, when you're swinging the sword, it also makes the sword a little bit lighter. Considering the fact that this sword is actually a 30-inch sword, I mean, it's a really, really long blade. The actual handle, or the suka, is 12 inches. Now, I chose to go with a 12-inch handle only because I knew that it was going to be a very long blade. And the balance is actually really, it's a really well-balanced sword. I mean, if you swing it, you have a lot of control throughout the entire sword. You can definitely stop it without much effort. It's a very, very well-balanced sword, and I think it's going to be a really, really good cutter. I'm actually looking forward to a cutting session that's going to be coming up pretty soon. You notice the Makugi pegs are basically right in the center of the diamonds. So So when you're taking the sword apart, you're not pulling up any of the ito when you're taking the makugi pegs out. Most of the time these makugi pegs, all right, are under the ito. And then that means when you're taking apart, it kind of pushes up the ito a little bit. So I did a special request to make sure they're in the middle of the diamonds. And the ito wrap, which I didn't mention before, is extremely tight. I mean, it's one trait about the JKoo swords is the fact that they have a really, really tight iko. I mean, I can barely move it for the most part. And even the semigawa on the underneath the ito is a panel semigawa, but it's actually there's no emperor nodes or anything like that, but it's a really good quality raised skin. I mean, it's very clean looking. It's very it's shaped to the handle very, very well. I think it's a very overall very, very well done handle. If you guys got this far into the video, hooray! I applaud you and I thank you. Sorry for all the rambling on, but first time using this company, I had a lot to say about them. I promise the next JKoo video sword is not going to be this long. I hope it was informative. I hope I gave you some good advice, or some valuable advice, or somewhat valuable for ordering from this company, and some good insight and information on this particular sword that I got from JKoo. Because of the link to this video, I'm going to put the cutting session on another video, which I'm going to be posting pretty soon. That's if we don't get bombarded with snow in New York within the next couple of days. But I thank you for sticking around this long. I hope you enjoyed it. Please sub if you haven't already, and I'll get back to you with cutting with this sword very soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. Cheers.